Last weekend in Arlington, Texas, the world watched as Jammie Booker crossed the finish line to win the world's strongest woman title at the official Strongman Games Championship. It was a decisive victory. She beat British competitor Andrea Thompson by a single point. Thompson watched from the podium, visibly frustrated. But here's where the story gets complicated. Just 4 days later, the title was stripped from Booker, and Thompson was declared the true winner. The reason? Event organizers announced they had discovered Booker was assigned male at birth and violated the competition's eligibility rules. What should have been a straightforward athletic achievement became one of the most controversial moments in modern strength sports, and it's forced the entire industry to reckon with questions about fairness, inclusion, and how different sports organizations actually make their eligibility decisions. Before we get into the debate, let's understand the facts. When Booker registered for the official Strongman Games, she competed in the women's open category. The organizers say they had no prior knowledge of her assigned sex at birth. That's the critical detail here. They claim they weren't informed, which means they couldn't enforce their own rules even if they'd wanted to. According to organizers, Booker had not competed in women's events prior to June 2025. This means she essentially came out of nowhere to win one of the sport's most prestigious titles on her first major competition at that level. That alone raised eyebrows in the community. The organization's investigation revealed that a video posted to what appeared to be Booker's YouTube channel in 2017 featured a voiceover in which Booker identified as a trans woman. Additional evidence came from her social media. Her TikTok bio had previously described her as world's strongest lesbian, but the reality is, nobody asked her. The intake forms didn't require a declaration of sex assigned at birth. The competition had a process designed around rules that were apparently never actually enforced during registration. To understand why this became such a fiasco, you need to know what official Strongman's policy actually says. According to the Strongman Corporation's trans athlete policy, those who transition from male to female are eligible to compete in the female category under specific conditions, including maintaining testosterone levels below 10 nanomoles per liter for at least 12 months prior to competition, with documentation required. So, official Strongman does have a framework. It mirrors Olympic Committee guidelines. It's designed to be inclusive while attempting to account for physiological differences. The problem? The policy only matters if it's actually enforced at registration. In Booker's case, there was no checkpoint, no verification, no asking. She registered, she competed, she won. Only then did anyone look into it. Organizers emphasized in their statement that official Strongman is inclusive and proud to run events which do not discriminate against athletes based on personal characteristics. Any athlete is welcome, but it is our responsibility to ensure fairness. But they failed at that responsibility simply by not implementing the verification process their own policy requires. Let's hear from the women who were actually there. Andrea Thompson, the runner-up who ended up winning after the disqualification, was initially devastated on the podium. Thompson shared on Instagram, "What should be a momentous occasion has sadly been overshadowed by scandal and dishonesty from someone who was welcomed into our crazy sport. A sport which encourages women to celebrate themselves without being judged on how society says they should be." She's making a specific point worth understanding. She's not saying she doesn't want trans people in the sport. She's saying the situation was deceptive and that she, along with every other woman who competed, was robbed of clarity about who they were competing against. Her frustration centers on the lack of transparency and the humiliation of having her win tainted by controversy rather than celebrated on its own merit. Three-time World's Strongest Woman champion Rebecca Roberts posted, "Transgender women, people born male, should not be competing in the women's category. This isn't about identity. It isn't about politics. It's about the undeniable physical differences that exist in strength-based sports." But Roberts also clarified, "Trans people belong in sport, but women's divisions must remain biologically born female only." That distinction matters. The athletes saying the strongest things aren't arguing trans people shouldn't exist in sports. They're arguing that in strength sports specifically, where outcomes are measured in pounds and kilograms, Certain physiological advantages persist regardless of hormone therapy and make direct head-to-head competition unfair. So what does the actual research say? It's complicated. Studies, including one from the Canadian Centre for Ethics in Sport, have found that trans women do not have advantages over other women when competing in elite sport if existing rules are followed. A 2024 study in the British Journal of Sports Medicine showed that absolute hand grip strength of trans athletes after at least 1 year of hormone therapy was lower than that of cisgender men, but higher than that of cisgender women. What this means, hormone therapy does reduce some markers of strength advantage. After a year of testosterone suppression, trans women aren't as strong as men, but the study still showed they retained more strength on average than cisgender women, even after hormone therapy. The debate becomes, is that difference significant enough to matter in a sport entirely built around measuring strength differences? Different experts disagree. Different sports are reaching different conclusions. The catch is that this research is still limited. We don't have massive sample sizes. We don't have long-term studies tracking exactly how different people respond to hormone therapy over years. We're working with data gaps while making policies that affect real people's lives and real athletes' opportunities. Here's where it gets interesting at a policy level. After this incident, we're already seeing organizations tighten their verification processes. The question is whether policies should become stricter, requiring biological sex verification, maybe testosterone testing across the board, or whether organizations should build better intake systems that protect privacy while ensuring transparency. Some in the strength sports community believe the solution is separate categories. Instead of women's only or men's only, you'd have women assigned at birth categories and open categories. This would theoretically allow everyone a fair place to compete while protecting the integrity of sex-based categories. Others argue that creates stigma by essentially forcing trans athletes into explicitly labeled alternatives. What's become clear is that strongman as an industry, which previously had policies modeled on Olympic guidelines, now has to actually implement them consistently. Right now, the situation feels like rules existed on paper, but aren't always enforced in practice. The strongman community is split, but not necessarily along the lines you might expect. Major competitors like Mitchell Hooper, the 2023 World's Strongest Man, publicly congratulated Thompson on her championship performance. That's industry consensus, at least among top competitors, that the situation was handled correctly once discovered, but the discovery shouldn't have been necessary. What's created real tension is the feeling of betrayal. Booker trained hard. She competed well. Under the competition's own rules and under frameworks similar to what the Olympics uses, she might legitimately have had a case, but she didn't provide the verification the policy required, and the organization didn't check. Everyone involved feels wronged in different ways. One thing worth noting, sports equipment sponsor Iron Ape severed ties with Booker, citing violations of sportsmanship standards. This incident matters beyond strongman because every sport is wrestling with the same question. How do you balance inclusion, fairness, and transparency? Different sports are reaching different conclusions. Swimming, track, cycling, they all have different policies, different testosterone thresholds if they have them at all, different verification processes. There's no industry standard right now. What we do know is that having a policy and enforcing it are two completely different things. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton's office launched an investigation into the competition, examining whether the organization had processes in place and whether they were followed, which suggests the legal and governance questions here are becoming more serious than just sports debate. The challenge ahead for sports organizations is clear. They need to create processes that are simultaneously transparent enough that athletes know what to expect, consistent enough that rules are actually enforced, inclusive enough that they're not discriminatory, and fair enough that everyone competing feels the playing field is level. What happened at the World's Strongest Woman competition wasn't really a debate about whether trans athletes should exist in sports. The real conversation moving forward isn't whether inclusion is possible. It's about how to build systems, before competitions happen, that make fairness, transparency, and inclusion work together instead of against each other. Thanks so much for watching. Please drop a like if you enjoyed our take, and we'll see you in the next one.